Hey there, it's Poul Mark with the Transcend video blog, and I'm coming to you today live from a washing station in Musema. It's the Kayanza region of Burundi. I've been here now for about, I don't know, 10 days I guess, and I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about my experience this week. It's been a pretty interesting experience. I'm actually here working with a team from Alberta, and then also we're partnered up with a team here called with Food for the Hungry, FH Burundi, and we've been in 2 communities for the last number of days, specifically working on a coffee project. The communities here in Burundi had communicated back to the FH Burundi, which is a Christian relief organization, that they were interested in having a Western perspective on coffee quality, and so they could get a better understanding of how they might improve their quality and access some Western markets and ultimately achieve better prices for their coffee. And so through a whole chain of events, they found me, and here I am in Africa once again. And it's been a great week. We had it's been a real learning experience for me in a way that I probably haven't experienced in the past. This trip hasn't simply been a sort of a rush from one washing station to the next or one farm to the next. It's been a bit more diverse in terms of its focus, meeting with community members and visiting washing stations, visiting producers, and so I've learned a lot. And the other day we had an opportunity, or I had an opportunity, to lead a session with 10 producers, but they're also involved. There's two associations here, 2 cooperatives. That there's a washing station in Musema and there's a washing station in Mufumia, and both are very small. They're running Panagos machines, Panagos 500s. So they're micro pulpers from Colombia, and they have. We'll show you the tables behind me. They have some drying tables, but they don't produce a lot of coffee this year. In fact, their production is probably going to be less than half a container. So the production is very small, and as a result, the washing stations aren't very viable at this point. And so we are looking to try to identify what we could see in terms of their processes and their strategy and their approach to sort of help them with making a more viable business in terms of the washing station, as well as we met with individual producers to hear how they are dealing with the struggles they face in terms of growing coffee. So this past Friday I actually spent about 3 hours with an interpreter, and we met with 10 producers who are leaders in the associations, and I got a chance to listen to them and listen to their concerns, and I also got an opportunity to talk about some of the things that I saw simply from a quality point of view that they could work on in terms of improving quality. It was interesting. I got a chance the day before to actually go to Ngozi, and there's a lab there beside a big dry mill, the Sivga dry mill, and I got a chance to cup a lot of the day lots that they had prepared this year from this year's harvest, because they were looking to submit a small sample or a small lot to the Prestige Cup. This year there's a Prestige Cup, and essentially it's a forerunner to a full-blown Cup of Excellence. Cup of Excellence is happening in Rwanda in August, and they thought, well, since we're here, why don't we try to do something in Burundi as well. And so it's not a full-blown Cup of Excellence. There's going to be an international jury, but there won't be an online auction. So from what I can see, there's a lot of coffee being submitted to this competition. There's a lot of excitement in Burundi about this competition, and they wanted to have some coffee submitted as well. So I had an opportunity to cup with the cupper, that Jeremy, that's at the lab in Ngozi, and we cupped all the day lots, and thankfully we found a couple of lots that scored pretty well that we could combine to make a minimum of a 5-bag contribution. So we'll see how that goes. But so it's been a really amazing week for me. I've learned so much, and obviously at this point in the game, no coffee from these washing stations will make its way back to Edmonton. The quality just wasn't good enough this year. It's a difficult process for farmers in Burundi, especially these small producers. We're talking producers with the number of trees anywhere between 300, and the largest producers have 1,500 trees. So we're talking, you know, roughly a pound a tree yield, and so it's a difficult time. It's difficult for them to earn a living growing that little coffee, and especially when what's really interesting, what I found interesting here in Burundi and in this region, this Kayanza province and Musima and Mufumia, is the trees are really old. We've encountered bourbon trees that are probably as old as 70 to 80 years. So the trees are aging tremendously, and they prune very sporadically, and so the yields are really low. And then the soil doesn't help. The soil is very clay-based. I don't know that there's a lot of nutrition left in the soil. None of them have money for fertilizer, so it makes it exceedingly difficult to farm coffee in this region. But there is a lot of things that we did identify that they can do to help themselves in terms of producing better coffee, and one of the things obviously is to plant new tissue, get some younger trees back on the ground, and some of them are starting to develop nurseries now. And also there's obvious, when we've cupped the coffee this trip, there's obvious issues in terms of harvesting. There's a lot of green unripe that we instructed them about, and that was the other thing we got to do yesterday, which was the Saturday, is those same producers that we met with on Friday in that sort of in a workshop session. We arranged to have all of those producers travel to the lab in Ngozi. Amazingly, I think 4 or 5 out of the 10, or no, I guess there was 13 producers. I think roughly half of the producers have never even tasted coffee. So they're growing a crop, and I've talked about this in the past of how there's a huge disconnect between producers and the coffee that they grow. But most of them hadn't tasted coffee, and none of them had ever seen a cupping lab. So it was really fun to be part of that experience yesterday, where we got to take producers, they got to see a lab. They got to see their coffee roasted. And Jeremy, the cupper at the lab there, was amazing. He speaks Kirundi really well, and he's a Q grader, and he's going to be one of the jurists on the national jury. So I basically just let him go and said, hey, there's no translation necessary here. Just teach these guys. So it was a blast to see him, his passion about coffee, and you could see them really excited about what he was trying to tell them. And then we had an opportunity to cup. They were pretty surprised by the fact that some white guy from Edmonton could travel all the way to Burundi, and I could cup coffee, and Jeremy could cup coffee, and we could agree. That was a little bit hard for them to come to grips with to start with, but we sort of walked them through it, showed them the cupping sheets, and showed them how we score coffees. And by the end of it, I think they were more convinced, and I think they found I think there was a more impetus maybe to start to do some of the things we were talking about in ways that they can produce quality. So I don't know, I don't want to drag on too long. There's so much video we've taken on this trip. I could probably make an hour-and-a-half documentary with all the video that's been taken in Burundi and around the coffee. One of the things I got to do this trip, which I was really excited about as well, was to visit the Bois washing station. And obviously, for those of you who are familiar with Transcend, we're pretty big fans of the coffee that we have from Bois. So I'm excited to see what they do. They submitted actually this year to the Prestige Cup 60 bags of coffee. So if they do well in that competition, they could have a pretty large income stream from that coffee. So it was really exciting to get to Bois as well and see that washing station, and we'll post more pictures of that on the blog as well. So anyways, I don't want to ramble on too much. Suffice it to say, this trip to Burundi has been pretty life-changing for me, and you'll see more and hear more from me about this as time progresses. But until then, it's Paul out from Musima Cooperative Washing Station in Kayanza Province. Drink less more often.